100 years ago, Nikola Tesla discovered a healing technology that threatened the entire pharmaceutical industry. The day he died, the government seized everything. For 100 years, this technology was hidden. Until now, plasma is back. Tesla Club, tzla.club.
Good morning and welcome to Friday's episode of Trending. Well, the news we've been waiting for, sort of, has finally happened. A member of the Epstein flight list is finally facing legal action for their actions. Well, in Prince Andrew's case, or former Prince Andrew's case, it's actually not for the most abhorrent of the crimes that he has committed. It's for essentially corruption in public office. That's what he's been arrested for, not the sex allegations that he abused children and trafficked women and all of that. That's to one side. This is about public office. He gave secrets to somebody he shouldn't have given secrets to, essentially, which is not good, obviously, but it massively falls into the shadows when you look at the crimes that he actually committed as well. Should he really face prosecution for those first? Well, I certainly think he should. But this is a start. So let's look into what's happened yesterday and let's look into the hilarious symbolism of parts of it as well. So yesterday, 6 unmarked police cars entered the Sandringham estate up in Norfolk and arrested Andrew on his 66th birthday. Right, so 3 6s, 666, the sign of the devil. They love their symbolism, these guys, don't they? They always tell us they don't do these things by accident. Lots of people will have seen that and will have smirked and will have thought, oh, ironic. Those sort of things aren't ironic when it comes to the way they do things. Why wasn't he arrested yesterday? Why wasn't he arrested today? They love their symbolism. They really do. Because they know that symbols and signs and things like that have energy attached to them. And they're always trying to create something. And also, I think there's part of it that, you know, the whole adage of the vampire has to be invited in. They have to tell you what they're doing. Because if they tell you and you don't resist, that's your compliance. That's you accepting that they're going to do whatever it is they're going to do. So by, dropping these symbolism hints and things into these things and people not noticing or people maybe pointing it out but not doing anything about it or being able to do anything about it, that's almost our compliance. So I would say with quite a lot of confidence that isn't an accident. Those numbers, that date, that day, that number of police cars and so on. So the headline says, police continue to search Andrew's former home after release from arrest. So he was released late last night, about 9 o'clock, from a police station in a town called Aylsham in Norfolk. He's had his house that he was living in and Sandringham Estate searched, and he's had his former house, Royal Lodge, down at Windsor searched as well. The King, who definitely has done nothing wrong, has come out and said that the law must follow its course, and he's very sad to see what is happening. Because he definitely didn't know any of this. He was blindsided completely by it. Young Charlie. Sorry, not so young Charlie. In an update from Thames Valley Police, who are leading this investigation, they said Andrew has been released. However, he's still under investigation. The arrest, first reported by the BBC, comes after Thames Valley said they were assessing a complaint over the alleged sharing of confidential information by the Prince with late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew's always denied any wrongdoing, but still massively paid out to Virginia Griffo when she was alive, an out-of-court settlement, which is definitely not what you do if you're innocent. So the fall from grace is quite incredible. And the picture you put up now of him in the back of the police car after his release is a man who, shall we say, looks like a rabbit in the headlights. He looks like he has no idea what has just happened. And that's quite a comforting thing to observe, I have to say, given the actions of this man and the victims that he has abused and he has taken advantage of, and the psychological damage that he'll have caused to those people and others. So that's quite a comforting thing to see that there is a little bit of justice here. However, he's still being taken back to his multi-million pound house that he's living in off the taxpayer's expense, or off his brother's expense, who lives off the taxpayer's. So I don't see this complete fall from grace done yet. The question is, what's the outcome of this? Because if they wanted to sweep this under the carpet, they would do so. If they wanted to get rid of anything to in terms of exposing him, they would do. So what's really going on here? Now, a long time ago, my dad wrote about the monarchy in general, and the plan was to abolish the monarchy, which again, lots of people will look at and go, great idea. I agree. Me too. But we've spoke about this on previous episodes, that the status quo being replaced, we will all celebrate. However, my question is, what's the status quo being replaced with? Now, the only thing I will say about the monarchy is, from a psychological perspective, people associate it with Britain. Obviously, it's the British monarchy, but it's a very, it's a British institution, essentially, in people's minds, or the Queen was. Because the Queen had obviously been ruled for so long and been alive for so long that pretty much everybody alive today had only ever known her as your head of state. So when she went, the monarchy was always going to become very vulnerable, because you've got Charles, who is incredibly unpopular for a number of reasons, one being the public perception of him and the actual perception of him around the death of Princess Diana, and the fact that he was almost certainly involved. And I think most people, not even just conspiracy theorists, would argue that there's some evidence there, or they have questions at least. So that he's very unpopular there. William has no personality whatsoever. Andrew, Edward, they're all very disliked. Prince Harry was probably the only one that was quite liked, and he's disappeared off to America. So the monarchy was always quite vulnerable. And since these revelations have come out, which many people have been talking about for a long time, but since they've been publicly discussed, it's become even more unpopular, obviously, for obvious reasons. So getting rid of the monarchy is something that is part of the agenda, because it breaks down an institution that people associate with Britain. And also it forces a complete rebuild of the entire British setup, because everything is His Majesty's, whether it's the government, whether it's the Treasury, whether it's the armed forces, whatever, the revenue and customs, the border force, whatever it is. Now, I am on the side that these systems need to go and need to be replaced with something new from the ground up. My question is, who is leading that charge to replace them, and what are they planning to replace them with? That's the key question to ask here. If we had somebody in a position of power who was calling for the replace of these systems and was leading that charge, who was on the side of the people, and you know that what's there now is going to be replaced with something that's what works better for people, where power moves closer to the hands of people, the everyday people on the street, the everyday people living in the towns and cities working across the country, then I'd be calling for this. Brilliant, fantastic. But that's not what this is going to do. That's not what's designed to do. They want to build a new system. We know they want to build a technocratic infrastructure where you have appointed officials, not elected officials, where we are ruled and dominated by AI. So in order for that to happen, in order for that outcome to happen, the status quo, the current system, has to fall. Of course it does. So we can, if we're not streetwise enough, we can see these things that are happening and on one level go, great, these people deserve their justice, 100%. But we also need to look one step further and go, okay, if this is happening, why is it happening? Because this could have happened 10 years ago. This could have happened 20 years ago, but it's not. Why is it happening now? And what is the outcome? What becomes of it? What's the next stage? So Andrew gets arrested. Right, what happens next? Is there rumblings of discontent towards the monarchy in general? Is the monarchy going to fall? And what's it going to be replaced with? I think these are the questions that we need to ask. I'm not sat here saying this is a bad thing. These people getting arrested, these people getting justice. Of course I'm not. These people should rot in jail for the rest of their lives at best. But I'm just trying to play, the chess game that they will be playing, where they are thinking one move ahead. They're not just coming in and arresting Andrew on a whim because they think, oh, public backlash, we probably should do this. No, this is a play. There's a reason they are doing it now. Hence why I said at the top, there's a reason there were 6 police cars. There's a reason they did it on his 66th birthday. These things are not done by accident. So passage of time will tell us what the real play here is. But I would say that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that an abolishment of the monarchy or a breakdown of the monarchy is part of their agenda anyway. Because it would be a complete change of British culture, which I want. I'm in agreement with 100%. But what's it being replaced with? That's the point. That's the question. And that's what we need to ask. I think that's what we need to keep asking. Because you can see this thing and think, oh, this is great. Look what's happening. Okay, but Why is it happening and what's it being replaced with? That's I think the question, because part of this agenda is to give us false hope, is to make us think we're winning. Because if somebody thinks they're winning, they don't resist. If somebody thinks they're on top and they're getting what they want, they don't fight, they don't push back, they don't feel they need to. So in the recent times where they've slightly relaxed digital ID, or they've paid lip service to, they've slightly relaxed other things. Trump might have done a couple of things that people were happy with. Don't let that relax you and draw you into a false sense of security that you can just take your foot off the pedal and let these guys get on with it. They're running the show, they're now listening to us, they're going to do what we want, and they're going to do things in our interests. Of course they're not. They're just releasing the pressure valve a little bit. They're just giving us that false hope. They're just giving us that little moment where they relax. That's a form of torture. You don't torture somebody to extremes all the time. You give them those moments of false hope. You give them those moments of temporary pleasure where they relax slightly. Because then when you come again, it feels 10 times worse. You know, all you have to do is search for that. That is a technique that's used in torture. And that is essentially what we are under. Now that sounds extreme, I know, but it's essentially what we're under. You look at most people and they are just trying to survive the day. They're just trying to survive the week, the month, the year. Whether that's with their health, whether that's the cost of living, whether that's, worrying that bombs are going to rain down on them, whatever it might be, most people are just trying to survive. We do live in a system where the people that run it are running it for demonic reasons and literally demonic entities. It's never going to be a picnic unless we absolutely demand nothing less than that, which is what we need to do. We can't accept these breadcrumbs of a prince who did something a long time ago, and is a very sinister man, of course, but he's been arrested and then we just walk off and we accept it. No, we've got a king, we've got a head of state who was bosom buddies and best mates with Jaymie Savile, for goodness sake. Until he's dragged out and chucked in jail for the rest of his life, I'm not going to relax. We've got war criminals walking the streets like Tony Blair. Until they're in jail, we can't relax. We're not winning. So let's take a smile at reading this story, at the fall from grace of this despicable human being. But this has to be step one. This can't be where we allow it to end. This can't be where we allow it to finish and accept these breadcrumbs were being chucked, because as we've said a few times in the last week or so when we've been discussing these Epstein files, they are the tip of the iceberg. They are the tip of the iceberg. I want to know who those names are that are redacted. I want to know who those people are, where they are, what they're doing now. Those people to face justice. The other thing is there will be a Jeffrey Epstein of 2026. There will be somebody out there doing exactly what he was doing now. I want to know who that is, who he ties into, who he works for, who he's got compromised. Because the idea that people like Epstein and people like Savile die and then those whole things just disappear, of course they don't. There'll be successions and of course people like that will still exist today. So it's very important to focus on the past, of course, because the past teaches you the present and the future. However, in the present, these things are still going on. There will still be children being trafficked. There will still be children being abused. There will still be young girls and boys being exposed to the most abhorrent of crimes. And that's not something that we want to talk about. That's not something we want to acknowledge, because it's dark, and it is dark. It's 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm sat talking about these subjects. It's not easy. It's really, really difficult to get your head around, but ignoring it doesn't make it go away. And in order to get justice for these people and to stop any future generation suffering at these people's hands, we need to be relentless and not accept anything less than full disclosure and these people being thrown in jail and the key chucked mid-Atlantic at best. Right, thank you for tuning in with me this morning. I appreciate your time. As always, we're going to talk about the new nasal shot that they want to bring in for all types of colds, flus and viruses, etc. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Trump's plan to release secret documents on UFOs and aliens. I'll see you on iconic.com.
Don't mention the reptiles, Dave.
Even less is said about the Grey Pope, who some believe to be the true ruling power in the Vatican.
Humans emitting a MAC address.
All of them had
Bluetooth signals.
I've never seen it before.
Queuing up to transition their children.
This is the ultimate suicide cult.
What if the symbols around us every day aren't just ornamental?
We lost 1,000 years of history.
What if they're instruction?
That state of awareness is not manipulatable.